I'm Todd Schrupp. Welcome to this evening's edition of TVG's Legends. Our guest tonight is Hall of Fame rider Pat Day, one of the most intuitive and accomplished riders in thoroughbred racing history. As a matter of fact, he enjoyed success almost immediately on the racetrack, but there was a huge void off of it. In fact, there was a moment in 1984 that would alter the course of his life. Tonight, Gary Stevens sits down to talk with Pat Day about his career and the moment that changed everything.
Pat, I want to welcome you to the Legends Show. You are a legend, and it's only fitting that we have you here today.
Well, it's a joy to be on with you, and as you were just sharing with me some of the others that you've done, I'm keeping awful good company.
First of all, let's just start out with what was your background in horse riding or horse racing?
Well, I started riding for fun when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was raised in a small ranching farming community in Colorado. My dad was a body and fender repairman by trade, but he wanted us kids to have responsibilities, so he bought a little place out in the country, and we had a couple of ponies and a milk cow and chickens, and all of us kids had responsibilities, had chores to do. But subsequently, we learned how to ride early. And my dad, bless his heart, he wanted us to learn how to ride the horse, not the saddle. So the first probably 3 or 4 years I was riding, I had to ride bareback, which I think was a great asset and obviously what turned out to be my life.
Do you remember your first race? Can you remember it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't remember the horse's name, but I was on the lead. I couldn't even hold my stick. I had to put my stick with a rubber band. I couldn't twirl my stick. Barely knew how to cross my lines. And Philly broke sharp and went to the lead, and she was on the lead about probably inside the 8th pole, and then a horse ran by me and won the race. An older rider, a guy named Lyle Murray, and he came to me afterwards and he said, there was no way I could let you break your maiden first race out. He says, you got to learn how to ride first.
What was the personal life like at that time? I mean, just as you're starting to win some races and have a bit of success on down the road, what was life like? I'm not really proud of that aspect of my life. First of all, to have that sort of success that quick, I didn't appreciate it. You know, when you have to work hard for something, maybe you appreciate it a little bit more, and I wasn't appreciating it. I was taking it all for granted. You know, I thought I could do that all day, run all night, gallop horses in the morning, ride in the afternoon, and that's what I was doing. And I was drinking every night, you know, just partying, just crazy. But there was just something missing in my life, and then in 1982, I was in a position to be leading rider in the country. And I thought, man, that's the answer. You know, the world would have you to believe that once you reach a certain level of success, once you get the corner office and the 6-figure income, that you're going to be happy. And that was me. I thought, wow, if I can be leading rider in the country, that will satisfy this gnawing inside of me. And as the Lord would have it, I secured the national riding title. In 1983, I was leading rider again. And in 1984, my wife and I were vacationing in Colorado with my family. I boarded a plane, flew to Miami, Florida on the 27th of January, got into Miami late in the evening, and when I was all ready to go to bed, well, what was on TV wasn't really interesting to me. Jimmy Swaggart, who was a very successful television evangelist, preacher out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was having a televised crusade. Now, I didn't think that's what I wanted or what I needed. I thought at that time in my life that Christianity or religion was for women and children and wimps. It was not for a successful man. So I ran through the channels. Nothing really got my attention. Flipped the TV off and went to bed. Immediately went into a very deep sleep and slept so sound that when I awoke, I thought I'd been sleeping for 6 or 7 hours. Thought I'd been sleeping all night. But I awoke to the distinct feeling that I was not by myself in that hotel room. And I sat upright and looked around, couldn't see anything, but I could feel a definite presence there with me. Now, I don't know if at that point, Gary, if the Lord prompted me to get up and turn the TV on, or if I'd done that thinking, man, let me turn the TV on, rid myself of these feelings. But I walked over, turned the TV set on, and as the picture materialized on the screen, I realized immediately that, number one, I hadn't been sleeping very long, because Jimmy Swaggart was still on TV. And it was right at that point in the program when he's completed delivering his message of salvation and is having an altar call for anybody and everybody that would like to invite Christ into their heart. And at that moment, Gary, it was like the spiritual scales were removed from my eyes. And I could see, I recognized and realized that the presence there with me was the Spirit of the living God. And this was my personal altar call. And I knew that that's what I was lacking, that that's what I wanted, that that's what I needed. Much in the way that all of my writing is intuitive. It was a God-given talent, a God-given gift. I just knew what to do. I just knew that that's what I wanted. And I fell on my face and wept and cried and invited Christ into my heart, never to be the same again.
Your career has sort of paralleled the Breeders' Cup World Championships. That's the year that it all started. And there was a historic race, the very first Breeders' Cup Classic. Wild Again, Gate Dancer, and I believe it was Slew of Gold.
Slew of Gold.
With your old man, Angel Cordero, another legend, coming down the stretch. Tell me what that race felt like.
I'm in the jocks room, I believe it was on a Wednesday. The overnight came in, or Thursday, whatever day it was that they drew the entries for Breeders' Cup. And the overnight came in the jocks room, and every horse had a rider named on him. As I'm going down through there looking at all the entries, everybody's got a rider named on him except Wild Again. Well, I had ridden him before. Earlier that year, I won the New Orleans handicap on him, won the Oakland handicap on him, and I said, wow, maybe I can make the mount on this horse. So I go running to the front of the jocks room, and you know how Hollywood Park is laid out with the clerk of scales desk and office right inside the door. Well, I come running in from the jocks room. Well, coming in from the outside is Bill Ellen, one of the principal owners, and Vincent Tiffany. And when they came, our eyes met as we came in the door, and he said, would you? And I said, could I? And I mean, it was there. And I went out and blew him out on Friday morning. He worked well. But I'll be very honest with you, I thought he was up against it. We broke, run into the race. Mugatia was in the race with Terry Lipham. He was in there as a rabbit for Slew of Gold. He was going to ensure a realistic pace. And we went under the wire, and Mugatia was running along there, and I'm outside looking at him, and he ducked out just going under the wire the first time. When he ducked out, well, Wild Again ducked away from him. And when he done that, well, I grabbed him to straighten him up, just a reflex move. When I did, he locked on, run off. Run by Mugatia going into the first turn. I'm thinking, this isn't going well. You know, we can't be running along like this and expect to win. And so they're all the way up the backside and around the far turn. I'm trying to talk him off of it, trying to hold him in because he never turned me loose. He kept wanting to bear out and bear out and bear out. We come to the head of the stretch, and Slew of Gold run to me with a head of steam. And as he came to me, I thought, well, that's it. I really expected Wild Again to throw in the towel. I expected him to cave in. When Slew of Gold got right to him, he just refused. I've never before since been on a horse that tried any harder than he did from the quarter pole to the wire. It was amazing. I could hear him grunt every time he pushed off. It was like when you listen to the lineman when the ball is snapped before they hit each other. That's the way he was every jump. And I'm trying to hold him in. Slew of Gold run to us, and we're going down the stretch, and then here come Gate Dancer on the outside with Lafitte. And it was an awesome horse race. And I'm just trying to keep Wild Again. He's giving me all he's got. I'm trying to hold him in, keep him running. When we went under the wire, I didn't know if I'd won or not.
Right.
And galloped out and come back, and of course all the numbers are flashing, but mine's at the top of the board. Now I don't have a clue whether they're going to leave it up or not. I knew there had been some jostling, some bumping, and pushing down there late in the stretch. I knew that Angel had steadied on Slew of Gold in the middle. Not real sure just how it was going to play out.
You didn't use the whip at all, did you?
Slapped him one time down over the shoulder.
One time down the shoulder.
Yeah.
That was just one in many times that Pat Day just sat there patient and almost like you were teasing the competition, encouraging them to either come up on you or you were sitting a half a length back on it. Throughout the years, me even watching as a spectator, if I wasn't riding in the race, when's he going to move on this horse? Did it faze you at all that you were causing heart attacks, possible heart attacks to owners, trainers, bettors? Were you ever conscious of that during a race, or just doing what you felt?
It was part of that God-given talent, Gary, an ability to communicate with the horses. Horses were willing and responsive to me and for me, and just an intuitiveness of knowing how much I had, when to call on them. I've got no plausible answer for that.
I'm going to skip forward a little bit. You rode a great horse named Easy Goer. Did you know before you rode him for the first time that he was going to be something special?
I really didn't. I'd never been on him, and appreciated Mr. McGahee, Shug, giving us the opportunity. He told us he thought he was something special, and I was just playing off of that. I got him beat the first time he ran. Not having ever been on him, not knowing what kind of acceleration he had or anything really about him except that Shig was pretty keen on him. We broke, we're in the middle of the pack, and he's handling everything like a pro, but I was unsure just how responsive he was going to be. Didn't seem like he was too enthusiastic about the work at hand, and so I pulled the trigger a little early, not realizing that I was going to get the response that I did. When I called on him, he exploded, and now we're running, and I was, at that point, felt like I was committed to go on. Concerned about letting him down and confusing him, start, stop, and so I went on, and he got beat the last couple of jumps. The horse come and got him right at the wire. But probably, without a doubt, the best horse I ever rode.
Leading up to that Kentucky Derby, I believe it was 1989, with Sunday Silence as his main adversary. They hadn't faced each other. Did you feel going in that this was going to be your Derby, that this was your best opportunity to win a Kentucky Derby?
I thought, I knew I was very well mounted, but my concern was with the track conditions. We'd gotten beaten a Breeders' Cup Juvenile as a 2-year-old on the same kind of racetrack. And I just kept telling myself, well, he's grown up, he's matured, he'll handle it, he'll be fine. The track is getting better through the course of the day. It's getting faster, it's getting tighter. It's not the sticky peanut butter substance consistency that it had been when he'd gotten beat as a 2-year-old. I kept telling myself all these things. But as he was warming up, and I wasn't real comfortable, real confident at that point, just because of the way he was responding. And then, of course, in the race, he in my opinion, never got out of second gear. Was hard-ridden to get him to extend as much as he did. Very uncomfortable on the footing, just wouldn't extend himself, and just testimony to his talent and ability that he was able to run second.
When Legends returns.
When I went under the wire, this feeling that had started from way down deep inside just erupted, and it was absolutely the greatest thrill I've ever had in racing.
This one is Easy Goer and Sunday Silence going nose and nose in the Preakness. Sunday Silence, Easy Goer. Here's the finish. Sunday Silence wins it by a nose.
You come back in the Preakness 2 weeks later, and to me, probably the greatest stretch battle that I'd witnessed, and to this day still. I mean, I was in some great battles, some head-and-head battles, but with Sunday Silence on the outside and you down on the inside.
I felt miserable immediately after the race because he should never got beat, in my opinion. Yeah, it was absolutely rider error. He kind of hopped at the brake, didn't get away real clean, got a little anxious going into the first turn. I mean, he was tugging on me pretty hard, and I was right behind Sunday Silence. And when we turned up the backside, I opted to come out a little bit and give him his head, let him settle into stride, and just to let him get comfortable. And when I run up alongside of Sunday Silence, well, P. Val looked over and seen Big Red, and he decided that he wanted my part of the racetrack, and started to carry me to the outside. And at that moment, that's where I made the tactical mistake. Rather than taking into consideration that if I'm 12 wide, he's got to be 11 wide. It angered me that he would be doing something like that in this race. Just ride your race. You don't have to play cutesy with me. And Easy Goer was wanting to run, so I let him run. And when P. Val knew that I was going to try to get the jump on him and push him back down in there where he belonged, he let Sunday Silence run. I've never put the clock on the tape, but I guarantee you we zinged him up the backside. I mean, we're running, and as a tandem, as a pair. But I got in front of him and eased him back down to the inside. We're getting to the turn, and Angel Cordero was on a real fast horse called Houston for Wayne Lucas. I don't think you could put Houston in a trailer and drag him a mile and an eighth. It was just too far. He was a real anxious, free-running kind of horse, and Angel had his feet in the dashboard trying to slow him down. And so when he got to the turn, he didn't change leads and drop into the turn smoothly. He went straight a couple of jumps. Easy Goer changed leads, Sunday Silence changed leads, and when I dropped in and Houston went straight, Sunday Silence had to check. my momentum carried me on up to and past Houston by the 3/8 pole. So now I figured, well, Sunday Silence would come back to me shortly. You know, he'll come back, but I didn't think he would get back to me until I got into the stretch. So I let Easy Goer go ahead and take a breather. And so we're cruising past Houston, and almost immediately, Sunday Silence is on us. P-Val's got blood in his eyes. I mean, he's upset. He thinks for sure that I just shut him off. And so now he's got the jump on me. And he bumped me several times, pushed me right down on top of the fence. If you go back and watch the race, Houston actually had to steady off my heels. He banged me down to the fence. And now we're in a position that Easy Goer's never been in. I mean, he's not used to being down in, pushed and banged. And so he's a little hesitant. And we come off the turn, and he's real slow about changing leads. And about the 8th pole, he finally changed over to his correct lead, and we inched in front of Sunday Silence, and I thought, wow, that's it. We'll just go on and win the race. And about that time, his legs just went rubber. I mean, he'd emptied out. You know, he ran too hard up the backside, got just a little short breather around the turn, and then Easy Goer or Sunday Silence was on him, and I mean, he's fighting hard, but his legs, there's nothing left. He's giving me all he's got. And at that point, I thought, well, Sunday Silence is banging and bumping on me. I said, let me see if I can initiate a little something here. Maybe if I while I've got the advantage, let me come out and bump him a little bit.
The green light's already there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, if I come out and bump him a little bit, maybe I can maintain my advantage to the wire, because the wire wasn't coming quick enough. Sunday Silence was inching back past us. And I turned his head out, you know, tried to get him to come out into Sunday Silence. His head turned, bless his heart, he was tired. He just turned his head and stayed the same. His body never turned. And Sunday Silence got us at the wire. Absolutely rider error. If I'd have let him just cruise up the backside, P-Val put me where he wants to, he'd have run away from me going in the turn, because Sunday Silence accelerated and run around the turn like a hoop around a barrel. But Big Red, he'd have got his feet up underneath of him, leaving a 3/8 pole, and there's no doubt in my mind that he'd have run by him in the stretch. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
You come back in the Belmont Stakes 3 weeks later, win the Belmont. Was there some sort of elation for you? I mean, did that justify your defeat in the Preakness?
Did I feel good that he won the race, that he showed what he could do? He caught a racetrack that he liked, and you know, that he was comfortable and confident over? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I've always thought and continue to believe that pound for pound he was a better horse than Sunday Silence. But the record doesn't bear that out.
Everyone knows, well documented, how much you wanted to win a Kentucky Derby. Churchill Downs, that's Pat Dayland, that's your home. When you finally won it with Little T, tell me about that race and the feelings when you crossed the finish line and it was Pat Day and Little T's Kentucky Derby.
The feeling was so enormous. And as I finally passed that guy, Gary Stevens, on Casual Lies down there late in the stretch, and I realized that victory was possibly within my grasp, I was working hard at that point just to maintain my focus and not think about that. I just put it, you know, just kept driving, kept riding. But when I went under the wire, this feeling that had started from way down deep inside just erupted. And it was absolutely the greatest thrill I've ever had in racing. And absolutely indescribable.
It was worth the wait.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there one race that sticks out that you're most proud of, that either strategy-wise or you just rode the perfect race?
Oh, I think Wild Again in the Classic. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and forgive me if it sounds like I'm bragging, but because of a combination of things, not the least of which was the confidence that I had derived from my relationship with the Lord, and it gave me the confidence to extend that to Wild Again. I don't think there was another man that could have rode Wild Again and won on him that day.
I'm not going to argue with you there. What was your biggest strength as a rider?
Oh, I believe that my greatest strength as a rider was the ability to communicate with the horse and to get along with him. I had read one time, Eddie Arcaro was they were talking to him about the difference between him and Shoemaker. And Eddie said unequivocally, he said, I am a smarter, stronger, better rider than Shoemaker. but horses want to run for shoe, and I have to make them run. And I found that to be true for me. Horses were willing to do what I wanted them to do when I wanted them to do it.
Were there any weaknesses? Now that neither one of us are riding anymore, I don't think there were too many weaknesses, but in Pat Day's mind, were there any weaknesses as a rider?
I rode my worst races when I thought too long and too hard. When I tried to strategize, and it inevitably happened when I was around Jerry Bailey, because I believe of all the riders that I rode with on a regular basis, he was probably the most intelligent. He was able to put together a game plan and then implement it. And I would see him doing this, and I thought, well, I need to do that. And when I would try to do that, I'd fail.
You rode for so many great trainers throughout your career, but I think for a lot of people out there, Wayne Lucas and Pat Day, your names are linked. You rode so many great young horses for him, fillies and colts. What was your racing relationship with Wayne? What was that like?
We had a love-hate relationship, you know, like Wayne has, I think, with all riders. We had a great deal of success, and I can't thank Wayne enough for the opportunities that he gave me to ride some really nice horses in some major races, and you know, it was he's a great horseman, and like I said, we had a bit of a love-hate relationship. He'd fire me, I'd fire him. We'd get back together and continue on.
Was there one particular rider, anyone, that you loved hooking up with in the stretch?
Not really. Not really. I mean, you know, the top riders, certainly, you know, you wanted to put it on them, but one day here at Churchill Downs, it was the last race of the day, Derby Day. I don't recall who I'd run in the Derby. It's been 4, 5, 6 years ago, I guess, but Robbie Alvarado, and I love Robbie, and I got the utmost respect for him, and certainly a great rider and winning all the races in the country right now, but that day he run to me at the top of the stretch, and I think I'd only ridden 9 that day or something. You know, it was one of them long days, and it was later in my career. And anyhow, we hooked up the top of the stretch. He run by me about a neck or a half a length, and I went to work on this old horse, and he got back past him right at the wire, and I looked over at him. I looked over at him pulling up, and I said, you know, when an old man who's down, and I'd pulled my back out earlier in the week throwing garbage out, if you can imagine that. But I'd been, you know, I was hurting a little bit. I said, when an old man that's broke down like me whips you like that, I said, maybe you ought to retire. Just jerk, you know, just messing with him. But it was a great life. It was a great life.
When we come back, I'll have my closing thoughts on the man they referred to as Patient Pat Day. Shortly after Pat Day retired, I had the privilege to host an event by the Turf Publicists of America. It was to give him one of many awards he had received over the years, but one called the Big Sport of Turfdom Award. The award would go to someone who represented thoroughbred racing in a positive light. And looking back at it, it was really looking at the entire career of Pat Day and how he represented himself in the sport. When he got up to accept the award, he took the opportunity once again to testify. Many times Pat Day was called to ride, but throughout his career, he realized there was a higher calling.
There's no joy like the joy of leading somebody into the knowledge of the saving grace of Jesus Christ. Races come and races go, but eternity is a long time.
I'm Todd Schrupp. Thank you for watching Legends.
Gate Dancer on the outside. What a finish. Wild again. Gate Dancer. Slow